Hello, wonderful people. This is your wonderful teacher, Johnny White, coming at you live and direct over YouTube. And from my dining room with the kitchen behind me. I'm tired of this place. But we're going to do a video and talk about this week's assignment. We've been doing summaries for the past, gosh, I guess this is start of week 4. I've kind of lost track. I hope you guys are well. Let me get that out of the way. And I do miss seeing you guys. I don't miss the interruptions by those two rascally students that sit in the middle table. You know who you are. Got to split you up all the time. But it is, what we have to do. We have to be safe. So it's a good thing that we're not seeing each other for right now. Hopefully it ends soon. So your last assignment, we were kind of backtracking, and stay with me through this week because there's a reason that we're doing this. We're looking at the progression of cities, societies, economies, whatever you want to call it. You hear these terms a lot, and they are, I think your assignment said pre-industrial societies, industrial societies, and post-industrial societies. So we'll talk about those real quick, and for those that have been in the class for a long time, we've gone over this before. But again, stay with me. There's a place that I'm taking this. Pre-industrial societies. It goes back to earliest men and women. Probably real scary way back when. Probably started hanging out in groups or cliques or clans or sets or whatever you want to call it. Squads. And for protection and to help each other live. It was hard living. You were scavenging for food, rooting around, looking for plants that you could eat. I always wonder who tested the first plants. Who was the poor guy that figured out that eating poison ivy, that's not a good plant to eat. And they would hunt and do all that stuff. And they were nomadic, which means you just follow, you don't have a permanent home. You follow the food supply. And again, this is review for a lot of you. They probably started settling down 5,000, 6,000 years ago when they figured out how to plant crops. And that gave people a reason to stay put. And gave people a more reliable food supply. And so that's happening way back when, and this is going to bring us up through the ancient Egyptians and the Romans and the Greeks, and then into the Middle Ages of Europe, where everything is essentially agricultural. There wasn't a whole lot of industry. There weren't factories. There weren't big trucks and boats and things, and obviously there were boats sailing around the world, but a lot of trade, a lot of interaction was still centered around farming. I think most people probably still were farmers, or your business dealt with farming products, agricultural products like blacksmiths, making plows and that kind of stuff. And it's going to stay that way for a long time. Pre-industrial societies. Eventually money's going to be introduced into these societies, and that's going to change things and pull them a little bit further away from agriculture because people are now trying to figure out how to make money. And a good way to do that was with crops and with agriculture. But then we get the Industrial Revolution. It hits different parts of the world at different time periods. It hits the Western Europe, and you can read different dates, late 16, early 1700s, started in the 1800s. And so that's when you start to see factories and you start to see major production and major ways of making money. And the analogy that I often use, or the story that I often use to kind of set that picture up is, way back when you needed shoes, you went to a shoemaker or a cobbler, as they were sometimes called, and they would measure your feet and make you some shoes. When your shoes got holes in them, you went back to that guy and he'd patch them up for you. It'd be a long time before you got another pair of shoes. Now coming to the industrial age with factories. Now shoes are made in factories. And that little mom and pop cobbler store, they're out of business. And now you would buy your shoes somewhere And when you wanted a new pair of shoes or your old ones got holes in them, you threw them away and you bought new ones. Again, made in the factory. And I'm oversimplifying all this. Obviously, it's far more detailed than all that. But just give you a rough generalization of how we shifted from a pre-industrial society to an industrial society in Europe and the Americas, and arguably it's still hitting places around the world. And eventually we're going to even come out of that. If you believe it or not, we are no longer considered really an industrial economy right now, an industrial society. We are post or after industrial societies. We don't have a whole lot of factories around here anymore. Back when I was a kid, cars were made in the U.S. American cars were made in the U.S. And again, we've talked about this in class before. That was a good job. If you got a job at a car plant and you got into the union, known as the United Auto Workers, you were in pretty good shape. You didn't have to have a college degree. And there were several car plants around here. There was a Chrysler plant out in Fenton. For decades, every Corvette in America was made in North City at the corner of Natural Bridge and Union, I believe it was. And there's still a Ford plant out in Wentzville, and I think there was one in North County, and that has since closed, and a few others around here. And those were car plants, and those were good jobs. And you weren't going to get rich, but you would be firmly in the middle class, and you would get a decent salary and guaranteed number of hours and time and a half on holidays, and you'd get health insurance for you and your family, and you'd have a nice pension for when you retired, so you could afford a nice middle class house, and you had a comfortable living. I knew several people whose parents worked for UAW. And it was a good way to live. And that was kind of the height of industrial America. Those jobs have since gone overseas. And again, we've talked about this in class before. But so much stuff is made overseas. We always talk about our shoes and how you look at the underside of the tongues of your shoes and it'll tell you where they're made. And almost no shoes are made in the United States anymore. It's Vietnam and Pakistan and Indonesia. Vietnam's a big one. And it still blows my mind that rather than put a Nike factory in, I don't know, Moberly, Missouri, they'll put a Nike factory in Vietnam. And it costs less for them to make those shoes in Vietnam and load them on a giant container ship, a giant freighter, and put all those containers on there and send them back over here to the United States. And they'll land in California somewhere, LA or San Francisco, and then put those giant containers on trains and ship them all across the country. All that money, that can't be cheap. But it is cheaper than having them made in, say, Moberly, Missouri, because they can pay the Vietnamese workers pennies on the dollar. If they had to make them in Moberly, they would be paying those workers around $20 an hour. And so rather than $20 an hour, you're paying people 40 cents an hour. And so it's that cheap. So we've lost a lot of our industry to countries such as Vietnam, and nothing against Vietnamese people. They're making a living trying to hustle too, right? So that's kind of what we do now. We're post-industrial, and a lot of what are called service industry jobs. A lot of people that work on their computers are performing servers for services for other companies, for big corporations. We have everything from the entertainment industry, and all those things are called service industry jobs because you're performing a service. You're not making an actual product. Still a lot of sales jobs out there. Sales jobs make you a lot of good money. So that's kind of post-industrial. So write me those summaries and start thinking about something for next week. And we'll talk about this. We'll have our Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and I'll get everybody that information by tomorrow, I promise. And I'll email it to everybody and put it on Blackboard and all that good stuff. So that now that we're kind of post-industrial, where do we go from here? And more importantly, to think about right now, how does the pandemic that we're under right now, how is that going to shape society moving forward? Because it is. There will be permanent changes. And it's going to affect countries and societies and cities all around the world forever. Um, and not necessarily in a good way, maybe in a good way. I kind of like the 6 foot social distance thing. I kind of like having the big sweaty dude that's standing behind me at Walmart, or I don't go to Walmart, sorry, at Walgreens. I like to have him 6 feet behind me. I'm okay with that. I hope they keep the paint, I mean the tape on the floor next to the cash register. Yeah, I'll follow that for forever. I like that one. But not everything is good. A lot of people are sweating about this working from home stuff. How's that going to change America? How is that going to change the way we're set up? What if you're a landlord? What if you lease office space to companies that are now working from home? What's that going to do to you? Are they going to come back? Are they going to realize they don't need that office all the time? Maybe just one little central office where everybody meets for a couple hours on Wednesdays? So things are going to change. That's why we're kind of backtracking to look a little bit and looking at how societies change. And we can theorize about how our society is going to change, because it is. It's going to. So think about that stuff. Again, 1 o'clock on Thursday. I'll get you all the info. I do miss seeing you guys. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Stay inside. I know it's a drag. I'm so tired. I love my house. I do. See those beautiful cabinets back there? And you guys know how I love to cook. See, there's my kitchen, my stovetop. And look, the chalk says, "Feed me, Seymour." And I love this place. But I am ready to get out. Ready to get out there. Start something besides sitting around here all day. But I'll do it because it keeps me and everybody else safe, and that's the bottom line. So hopefully we'll be back in school a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And I do look forward to seeing you guys again. Please be safe. Please be careful. And it will be a pleasure to talk to you guys on Thursday. Adios.